Hello, race fans, and welcome to Disc Golf Daily. It is Tuesday, and that means it's Numbers Day. In addition to going over the course growth and PDGA growth, we're also going to go over the DGPT standings and see who's going to make it into the Tour Championship. You might be surprised who should be. So let's start with some PDGA and course growth. Course growth. We had 31 new courses put in the ground last week. That is fantastic. Our average has crept up just above 23 and a half. Let's call it 24. We're all friends here. That's well over 3 courses every day this year. We're currently sitting at 15,950 courses. I estimate we will have 16,300 by the end of the year. Where did these courses get put in? Well, we had 17 put in the United States, and we had 6 put in Norway. There were a couple in Sweden and Finland, Canada, Estonia, Australia, Latvia, and the Netherlands. Each had a course go in. I love seeing Latvia keeping up with Estonia. Two of the last 3 weeks, both Latvia and Estonia got one new course. Latvia is not falling behind. PDGA earnings, Gannon Burr is still the leader. Not a lot happened on the men's side. He's sitting at 113,000. The real question for me is how many people are going to be above 100,000 at the end of the year. My guess is 3, and my guess is we're going to be amazed by that. I remember 2 years ago, we were all amazed that Kristen did it, and now we just expect someone to hit 100,000. We're going to have a bunch of people hit 100,000 in a few years. And this is the PDGA earnings. The top 10 women, Evelina, Owen, Missy, Kristen, and Holland are all very, very close. Any one of them could win the money race on the women's side. And when we talk about earnings per event, Kristen, Evelina, Gannon, and Ricky are the leaders, and they're all right around $4,000. So when we look at PDGA earnings, we did not have a big week this week because Pro Worlds was 2 weeks ago. So our earnings are basically the same, $1,065,000. 2023 did catch up some. They're at $940,000. And PDGA approvals. So last week we were 23% behind. But while I was talking with Seamus, I realized that we only had 2 new approvals, but there were 2 discs and 1 basket. And I realized we're not counting the baskets. So I went back and I added in the 15 baskets that had been approved, and we closed the gap from 23% to 17%. Well done, 2024. However, if you look at, we started the year 40 to 50% behind back in March and April. So we've done a very good job of catching up. It's nice being on this side of the COVID boom bust, and we're on the recovery side of that. PDGA events, last week we were 1.5% ahead, and this week we are 1.5% ahead. One of the really fun numbers of today, there have been 8,000 PDGA events so far in 2024. That compares with 7,884 at this point in 2023. But the real fun thing is we're only through the first 8 events. We're going to be well over 10,000 events, if not hitting 12,000 by the end of the year. PDGA rounds, at this point last week, we were 0.3% ahead. At this point now, we are 0.6% behind. That makes sense. Again, many fewer tournaments in the week after Pro Worlds. So I'm okay with those numbers. I expect we will bounce back and even catch up because Pro Worlds happened in a couple of weeks last year. This is the big problem number. There are currently and it's not even a problem. We're still doing great compared to where we would have been without COVID. So we're still doing great, but we're not doing as great as we want to do. There are currently 118,384 active PDGA members. As a matter of fact, the most recent PDGA number, 293,650, was issued. That means we're just 6,300 shy of 300,000. Wow, that is going fast. The problem, though, Last year, at the end of the year, we had 136,636 active PDGA members. This year, I'm estimating that we will end up below 130,000, which is right around a 5% decline. Our goal is flat, and we're going down about 5%. We will bounce back in the next few years, but that number is a little lower than we had hoped. And that does it for our PDGA and course growth. Now we're going to talk a little bit about DGPT standings. But before getting into that, I want to talk about the CCR Open, which happened in Holt, Michigan. On the men's side, GT Hancock beat a pretty impressive cast, especially when you consider Worlds just happened. Andrew Marweed, Luke Taylor, Joel Freeman, Emerson Keith, Parker Welk, and more could not catch him. It's a good win coming down the stretch. And on the women's side, Owen Scoggins held off Kristen by 2 for the win. Interestingly, Cadence Burge, who we've consistently mentioned as someone climbing up the rankings, rounded out the podium, finishing just 1 shot behind Kristen. Now, let's get into the points race and figure out what in the world's going to happen these last 3 events of the season. We are down to brass tacks. It's time to put up or shut up. Worlds is in the rearview mirror, and the Pro Tour points race is crystallizing. Let's see who's going to get some strokes at the Tour Championship, who's on the bubble, and who's on the outside looking in. You may just be surprised. First things first, the top 32 men and the top 20 women make the Tour Championship. I like that the women are getting closer to parity in terms of the numbers here. Well done, Pro Tour. Starting with the men, the current cut line is 390 points, and that is Vanyo Makala. He is looking to improve on his average finish to get a little more comfortable. Having said that, we anticipate it'll take 450 points to get to the Tour Championship. This is a little above Vanyo's average points per event, so he will need to improve to stay in. Why? Eagle McMahon. He's just 55 points behind Vanyo, and he's averaging 58 points per event. And he does not have enough qualifying events yet. So all of the points he earns at DGLO, GMC, and MVP will be added to his totals with no drops. For everyone Eagle is chasing, they will have to drop points from a previous event, presuming they do better than their current worst included event. Evan Smith is in a similar boat, but his average is not quite enough to make up the difference to Vanyo. So while he'll count all of his earned DGLO points without dropping any points from another event, he will need to do better than his season average to move up far enough to get into the Tour Championship. Having said that, he's got 3 events to do it, and he's pretty darn good, so I wouldn't bet against him. People on the outside looking in. This list really surprised me. It is getting really hard to qualify for the Tour Championship. We've got Ezra Aderhold, Jake Hebenheimer, Bradley Williams, and Garrett Gerthy. They each already have 4 or 5 drops, so we'll need to do much better than average to move up in the standings. And they're currently ranked 33rd through 38th. Plus, Eagle is about to move past them. So their position is even more tenuous than it looks. People on the inside looking in the rearview mirror, in addition to Vanyo, Ben Calloway, Paul Ulibarri, Emerson Keith, and Mason Ford. With some lackluster performances and anyone below them going off, they could easily slip just below the Tour Championship cut line. Luke Taylor is in that mix as well, although he, like Eagle, does not have enough events yet, so he will get to count all of his DGLO points. Joel Freeman and Luke Humphreys are the next 2 above them. They've got over a 30-point cushion. As long as they play to their ability or close to it, they should make the Tour Championship with no real worries. Now let's look at the top 8, right? The top 8. Who in the world? If you are 8th or better in Tour points, you start the Tour Championship with anywhere from a 5 to 10-point advantage over the guys that just barely made it in. When we think about how many tournaments come down to the wire, those strokes matter. Gannon Burr, our current points leader, has a 100-point lead on Ricky. If Ricky can find a way to win at any of the last 3 events, Gannon will not be able to afford to slip up if he wants to secure the points championship and the number 1 seed. But without a Ricky win, it would be almost impossible for Ricky to catch him. Ricky has an 80-point lead over Nicklaus and Calvin, and the scenario is basically the same. In order for either of them to move up to second, they're not going to catch Gannon. They will need to win one of the last 3 events and have Ricky play poorly. Nicklaus and Calvin are 100 points ahead of Anthony Barella, so same scenario there. So it pretty much feels like the top 4 are solid and just jockeying position. Primarily, it's a battle for third between Nicklaus and Calvin. AB, Isaac and Ezra Robinson and Kyle Klein round out the top 8, but Paul Macbeth and Chris Dickerson are lurking, just 20 and 65 points behind respectively. Having said that, I've got to give the edge to Chris Dickerson to move up into the top 8. I suspect, and I'll tell you why, I suspect Chris was very meticulous in choosing his events. He has currently played 9 events, and you count your best 10, plus both the playoffs. So he will not be dropping an event and will just add in the DGLO points. He averages 80 points per event. Adding 80 points would put him just above Kyle Klein in 8th place. A ridiculously solid season for Chris Dickerson. Obviously, Paul Macbeth has got a chance to pop off and do great at DGLO. He's proved it once with a -18. Joey Buckets Anderson and Matty O are in 11th and 12th and really have no chance of moving into the top 8 unless they podium a couple of times. Having said that, it feels like Joey Buckets could do that at every event this year. Welcome to the bigs, Mr. Buckets. On the women's side, it is pure mayhem at the top. You've got Owen, you've got Holland, you've got Missy. The top 4 are all within 70 points, with the number 1 ranked player in the world, Evelina Salonen, in 4th. Whoever podiums the most over the last 3 events will likely win the Tour Points race. And in 5th place, 150 points out, sits the greatest player over the past few years, without question. With 2 wins in the last 3 events, she could launch all the way up and secure an amazing finish to her season. I'm not counting her out just yet. So we've got 5 people battling for the lead. That is crazy. 5 people could win the Tour Points. Owen, Holland, Missy, Evelina, and Kristen. At the bottom, in the race for the top 20, there is much more clarity. Haley King, not Kling. Haley King is in 9th. Oh my gosh. In the race for the top 20, there is much more clarity. Haley King is in 19th, but has a 70-point cushion on Stacy Kiefer, so she looks safe to make the Tour Championship. Stacy, however, only has 10 points on Eliezer Midling, and Eliezer over the last 3 events has closed that gap from 50, and we still have 3 more events to go. Hannah Wynn is in the mix as well, just 30 points behind Stacy, but will need a couple solid finishes because she has to pass both of them. It's going to be an exciting end of the season. DGLO, GMC, and MVP, followed by the USDGC and the Tour Championship. I love September and October disc golf. My popcorn is ready. My root beer is cold. I can't wait to watch them bring it down the stretch. Thank you, Disc Golf Pro Tour. Thank you, PDGA. Thank you to all the amazing players and media that bring it. I watch DGN a ton more than Paramount Plus, and I can't help but get emotionally invested while I do. It's the greatest time of the year. Who will be our champions in 2024? If you have any thoughts, news, or opinions, shoot us an email, discgolfdaily@aol.com. That does it for us today. Have fun, throw them straight, tell a friend about Disc Golf Daily. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. It really does help us grow.